Today in our 2016 Thor Challenger Motorhome with a Ford F53 chassis, we'll be having a look at and installing the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar, part number RM-1139-149. Here's what our sway bar looks like installed. This is not a replacement sway bar. It works in addition to our factory sway bar to help greatly improve our vehicle's handling abilities while reducing body roll, providing us a smoother and safer ride. Now, the main reason you're going to want an additional sway bar on your motorhome is because motorhomes traditionally aren't known for having great handling, especially when you're driving down the highway and there's a crosswind going across the highway. The wind will cause the RV to want to roll over to one side. It makes for an uncomfortable drive while you're fighting the steering wheel dealing with the crosswinds. This will alleviate that. This will also reduce the body roll that you have during cornering, so it doesn't feel like it's going to tip over quite as much. This is especially nice if you're driving down a backcountry road where there's a lot of curves and it's not just a straight line. So how the sway bar reduces our body roll and gives us the greater stability that we're looking for is that when we go around a corner, let's say we're going left, our right side of the suspension will compress and the left side will raise up like this. This will limit the amount that it does that by limiting weight transfer. It'll balance it out between the sides so our vehicle will stay more planted to the ground and be more level. This will give us the stability we're looking for. We're not going to have quite as much of that feeling that we're going to tip over anymore. It'll be safer and easier for us to drive. And now we'll take the motorhome out on our test course. You'll see it with the sway bar installed. And you'll notice how significantly less body roll there is when we're doing evasive maneuvers, going around corners, and just doing simple turns in a parking lot. You will also notice how much more settled the suspension is as we're going over bumps. We're able to maintain more of our stability and handling in the motorhome. All right, here we are with our RV up in the air. I want to point out that we have it lifted by our axles because it's very important that we support the axle when we're doing this install. Otherwise, we risk causing severe injury to ourselves. We have it locked in position with a suitable lifting device, and we also have a couple jack stands that we'll be using to support the weight off the rear hitch later on in the install. We'll explain that part later. All right, now just behind our rear axle, right behind where our shock mounts to the frame, we have two 21mm bolts that go through our frame into a cross member. We need to remove these two bolts. Okay, this is our bracket that will attach to the frame to hold our end link in place. It'll go where we just remove those two bolt holes, and we'll bolt it in place with the bolts that we removed. Now, due to the thickness of our bracket, you may need to lower some of the weight off the rear axle and let the rear axle partially hang in order for the suspension to drop down in order to slide the bolts back into the original holes. This is where our jack stands come into place that are below our hitch. We can put some of the weight on the jack stands and allow the axle to come back down. All right, with both of our bolts now in place, we can tighten them down. All right, now we need to mount our mounting bracket for our sway bar. It'll go underneath our axle clamp, which holds our axle in place with the U-bolts around our leaf springs. So we'll remove these four nuts. They are 1 1/8 inches. Now at this point, I'd like to point out that we do have our vehicle supported by the axle. This is very important because we need to remove the nuts that hold the mounting clamp plate with our U-bolts around our leaf springs. That's what holds your axle in place. Since we're removing those, if you take those out, the axle can fall down and it could cause personal injury, so you want to make sure you have it properly supported. All right, we have an extra set of hands now holding our bracket up in place, which clamps the axle to our leaf springs. So we will install our sway bar mounting bracket, making sure that the small holes here face towards the rear of the motorhome and towards the center of the axle. And we'll just reuse the nuts and washers that we removed. Okay, once we have a couple of the nuts and washers started, we can remove our second set of hands. Make sure we have all 4 of the nuts and washers started back on, and then we'll snug them back up. All right, now we'll torque all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. Okay, now we'll install our sway bar end link into our bracket. We'll just raise it up, run the bolt through it, thread on the nut. Okay, now we'll tighten down this bolt with a 15/16 socket and wrench. Now once our bracket starts to squeeze tight against the end link, we'll know it's tight enough and we can stop. Just like that. Now that we have all of our hardware in place on the passenger side, we'll do the same process for the driver's side. All right, now with an extra set of hands, we'll raise our sway bar on up into our end links and run our bolt on through and secure our nut. Now using our 15/16 socket and wrench again, we'll snug down our hardware. Again, just enough till it starts to crush in on our bushing. We don't want it too tight and we don't want it too loose. Okay, we have 4 holes that are in our bracket where our sway bar bracket will attach to. We'll be using the hole closest to the rear. I'll call that our first hole, and then the third hole as well. We'll take one of our short bolts and a flat washer. We'll drop it down through those 2 holes that we're using. And that will be where we attach our sway bar bushing to. Now we need to lubricate our sway bar bushings with provided grease. You can use a glove while you do this, so you don't have to get your hands dirty. And we'll just spread this inside our bushing. Make sure we get a nice even coat all the way around the inside. This will help prevent any squeaks as we're driving over bumps, and will also extend the life of our bushing. Okay, we're going to install our bushing on our sway bar right where it starts to curl up here, so it'll be right in this area. So we'll just spread it open and stick it on. We'll take our bracket and it just simply slides onto the bushing. And we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, now we'll raise our sway bar on up and secure our bushings with another washer and a nut. Okay, now we'll use a 5/8 wrench to hold our bolt still and an 11/16 socket to tighten the nut. All right, now we'll torque our sway bar bushing brackets down to the amount specified in the instructions. And that completes our look at and installation of the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar, part number RM-1139-149 on our 2016 Thor Challenger Motorhome on a Ford F-53 chassis.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at eTrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.